All right, so today we're gonna do Whitney Johns. Some of y'all probably already know who she is. She is a fitness influencer, and she also did a couple of boxing matches, celebrity boxing matches, and won. But before I start, I wanna um talk about some of these other celebrities that I'm not gonna post on my YouTube channel. So I'm just gonna tell y'all what the ratings are because I already did a facial analysis for them. So some of y'all already know who these celebrities are. All right, so the first one is going to be Alpha Male Strategies, or he goes by the name of AMS. He's a YouTuber. His rating is a 4.75, which is a top 50%. The next one is Doja Cat, 4.9, top 50%. Tiana Trump, 5.7, top 28%. Zendaya, 6.6, top 4%. Demi Lovato, 6.8, top 2%. And then the last but not least, I don't know if y'all know who this is, but Ari Fletcher, 5.1, top 48%. So those are their percentiles. And so hopefully y'all can just take that in. And I know some of y'all might not agree with some of those ratings, but yeah. So let's see Whitney Johns and let's see how attractive she is. So her overall rating is a 6.6. How rare is that? That is 1 in 26 people. The percentage of people is the top 4 percentile. Now her side facial score is a 45%. Her front facial score is a 61%. Her total facial harmony is a 55%. Her facial dimorphism is a 3.5. Her body fat factors is a 9.5. And her miscellaneous features is a 9. Now we got the tier list to the right side. Tier 1 is ideal, Tier 2 is near ideal, Tier 3 is normal, Tier 4 is a slight flaw, Tier 5 is a flaw, Tier 6 is a huge flaw, and Tier 7 breaks harmony. Now these are the rarity scores of other celebrities, so y'all can compare. Now let's talk about her facial dimorphism, which is worth 20%. Now I gave her a check on jaw frontal angle, mouth to nose width ratio, and her eyebrow tilts, and she also gets some points for the eye aspect ratio. Her body fat factors was pretty much 100, really, so it was perfect. And her miscellaneous features, any flaws that were noticeable, skin qualities, I took 0.5 points off, but it doesn't really make too much of a difference. All right, so the first measurement is her eye aspect ratio, and I'm gonna just let y'all know right here what's her biggest flaw. Her facial convexity is very flat, and her nose got a little bit of flaws as well to it. So yeah. All right, so her eye separation ratio, so that's the distance between the pupil distance versus the distance between her bizygomatic, which is her cheekbone distance. So hers is at 46.5%. And 46.5% is within the middle, so her eyes are not too wide or too close set, so that's perfect. Her facial thirds, you want your facial thirds to be even, around 33%, which it is for her, so this is perfect. Her canthal tilt is a tier 4, 2.5, is very, very low. Preferably, you want to have at least 6 degrees for a female, because females tend to have higher canthal tilts, so this is pretty low for a female, so that is not ideal. And if it's close to 0 or negative, then that would be a complete flaw. Her facial width to height ratio, FWHR, so it measures how close the features are to your face or wide apart. Preferably you want your features in your face to be more on the compact side, but hers is on the longer side at 1.84, and preferably you want it to be at least 1.9. And this is going to be within the normal range, but this is not ideal at all. Her jaw frontal angle is perfect at 90 degrees, so she does have a pretty wide jaw. Her cheekbone height settingness, so she does have low set cheekbones at 66%, and 66% is pretty low, and that would be considered low set. Her total facial height to width ratio is 1.44. Her head is on the longer side. So what this means is that her head is really long, and this is pretty long for a female. Now for a male, this probably would be closer to the normal range, not the ideal range, or the preferred range. But yeah, this is really on the longer side. Her bigonial width is 85%. This is perfectly normal. She does have a wide enough jaw. Anything less than this will be considered outside of the what's considered ideal, and I believe that's anything less than 84%. So this is perfect. Her chin to filtrum ratio, so she does have a long filtrum compared to her chin, and if her filtrum, which is this upper part or upper region right here, was a little bit shorter, then it would harmonize with her chin a little bit well. But it's still within the normal range, but preferably you want it to be at least 2. So 2 to 1. Her neck width ratio is perfect at 77%, and she doesn't have an overly too skinny neck, so this is perfect. Her mouth to nose width ratio is a tier 1 at 1.58. Now, her nose isn't really wide, but her mouth isn't that wide as well, so they kind of harmonize well with each other, so that's perfect. Her mid-face ratio, so that is the distance between the pupils versus the distance from the upper lip all the way to the eye line, and it measures your mid-face and how long your mid-face is. Hers is at 1.07, which means she has a very compact mid-face, which is perfectly fine for a female. Now for a male, males can't get away with having a very compact mid-face because we tend to have longer faces in general, so this is perfectly fine for her. Her eyebrow settiness, so high set is her eyebrows at 1.4. Now this is perfectly fine. It's still within the normal range, but to have that Model X tier, eyebrows where it's low kind of set or mid set, I guess you can say, low to mid set, this wouldn't be considered that. But if it was more than, or if it was less than 1, then that would be considered low to mid set, which would be preferred for a female. Her eye spacing, one with eyes apart, is 1.06, so this is slightly outside of that ideal range. If it was 1.05, then I would give her points for it. But this is not bad at all. This is still kind of perfect in my opinion. This doesn't deviate too bad. So you preferably want your eyes to be one with eyes apart. It will just have a better harmony. And her eye aspect ratio, so how rounded or narrow is her eyes. Her eyes are perfect at 2.6. It's more on the rounder side, but females tend to have more rounded eyes in general. Her lower lip to upper lip ratio is a tier 2 at 1.25. And what this tells me is that her upper lip is a little bit more longer, a little bit more longer than what it needs to be. Preferably, her upper lip should be slightly less than her bottom lip. You don't want to have your upper lip, the same length as your lower lip or close to it. You want your bottom lip to be more dominating, or your bottom lip to be more longer than your upper lip. Her deviation from her ipsilateral aliar angle to her jaw frontal angle, so you don't want these two angles to deviate more than 15 degrees, and especially 5 degrees if you wanted to get a tier 1 score and you want complete harmony from both of these angles. So the ipsilateral aliar angle is the mid-face angle, and the jaw frontal angle is the frontal jaw angle that we all know. Hers is at 12 degrees. 12 degrees isn't that bad, but that's still within normal range, so that's okay. Her eyebrow tilt is a tier 1 at 15 degrees. 15 degrees isn't bad. This is perfect for a female face. It's not too tilted, and it has enough tilt. It's within the middle range. So this is very youthful for her to have. Her bitemporal width, so how much forehead exposure do you have? And this is relative to her cheekbone distance, or the distance between her cheekbones, and hers at 95%. 95% is at the highest range. Anything more than this will be considered unideal, and this is perfectly fine. So yeah, she does have enough forehead exposure, I guess you could say. And her lower third proportions is 35%. 35% is ideal, and you don't want it to deviate more than 3% away from 33%, which it does not for her. And yeah, her lower third proportions is perfectly fine. Her ipsilateral so the ipsilateral aliar angle is a tier 3 at 102 degrees. 102 degrees is a little bit on the wider side, so this is going to be outside of that range that is perceived to be ideal. Her gonial angle is a tier 2 at 130 degrees. That's not too far off away from 28 degrees. This is not too bad by any means necessary. Women tend to have more of an obtuse gonial angle, while men tend to have more sharper angles. So this doesn't deviate too far out from what is considered perfect. Her nasal frontal angle is a tier 1 at 133 degrees. 133 degrees is perfectly fine for a female. She does have a brow ridge and a little bit of brow bossing from right here, as you can see. So this is perfect. Her mandibular plane angle, so if this measures to see how down swung your jaw is relative to the Frankfurt plane angle, and hers is at a tier 1 at 19 degrees. 19 degrees is perfectly fine. It's not too down swung and it's not too flat, and this is perfectly fine for her. Her ramus to mandible ratio is a tier 1 at 74%. So her ramus is very, very long. She does have a very long ramus, especially for a female, but this isn't too bad. Anything more than 77% is going to be outside of that range, and she's perfectly fine with this, but she does have a very long ramus. Her facial convexity from the glabella, so this measures your facial convexity, and it goes all the way to her brow ridge. So from her chin to her subnasal, all the way to her brow ridge. And hers is at a tier 3 at 101. So what this indicates is that she does have a concave. Instead of convex, hers is concave. So her the outer portions of her face go kind of like curves out, and the inside portion of her face curves in. So yeah, she does have a concave face. So this is going to be outside of what is considered to be ideal. It's still kind of normal within reason, but it's not going to be ideal. Preferably, you do want a convex face, facial convexity. Her submental cervical angle is 90 degrees. 90 degrees is perfectly fine. And yeah, so she doesn't have a high hyoid, and she doesn't have any submental fat underneath the chin. So that's perfectly fine. Her nasofacial angle is a tier 5 at 24 degrees. 24, and this measures the relationship between the nose and the chin, and she doesn't have a good relationship between her nose and the chin because her nose is too downswung and it's not protrusive enough. So I can see why this would not harmonize well with each other. So yeah. Her nasolabial angle is a tier 7 at 69 degrees. And like I said again, that downswung nose is not going to help at all. So 69 degrees is going to be a complete flaw. Her orbital vector is neutral, so she does have a very neutral orbital vector. That's the bone protrusion underneath the eyes. Preferably, you want that bone protrusion to go past the eyes to make your eyes appear deep set, especially from the side. And it also can be seen from the front as well. Her total facial convexity, so this is a total facial convexity. So the difference between this and the glabella is that this includes the nose as well, or the nasal protrusion. She doesn't have a lot of nasal protrusion, so this is going to be considered very flat for a total facial convexity. So 151 degrees is not enough to be considered within the ideal range. You want to have a facial convexity that's at least 148. So hers is a little bit on the flatter side. Her mental labial angle, so this measures the indent between your chin and your lower lip, and hers is at 109 degrees. Now, women tend to have more of a protrusive chin, so that's why she does fall within the ideal range. But if her chin was a little bit more protrusive, this would have been slightly outside. So this is enough chin protrusion for her. So anything more than this will be outside of it. Her facial convexity from the nasion. So this one, instead of going from the glabella, it goes to the nasion. It's also another way to measure your facial convexity. Hers is at 177 degrees. 177 degrees is still outside of what is considered attractive. And this is going to be a slight flaw. Preferably you want. And another thing that it also indicates to me is that her nasal bridge is also pretty long. So she does have a very long nasal bridge, and it's very high as well. It goes very high. So that's one of the reasons why her facial convexity from the nasion is also flat. So that's one of the reasons why. And you're also going to see it in some other measurements with the nose, that what I'm talking about with the nasal bridge. So her nasal protrusion, like I said, with the nasal bridge going completely high up, this line right here is the trajectory of the nasal bridge. If her nasal bridge was a little bit lower, her nasal projection measurement would be perfect, but this is way off. 37 is a little too low. It got to be at least 55. So 37 falls way outside of that range. So she doesn't have enough nasal projection. Her nasal width to height projection, so this measures how long her nose is, and this is also relative to the width of your nose. And she does have a pretty long width of the nose, or lengthy width of the nose. So that what that means is that her nose is gonna have to be that much more longer, because it's all relative at the end of the day. And 0.95 is still outside of that range, and she doesn't really get any points for this. So her nose mythology is kind of off. Her rictus elan is perfect. That is a tier 1, so it goes from the tip of the nose down to the chin. Preferably, you want your bottom lip to be closer to the line than your upper lip, which it is for hers. Her H line is perfect as well. Goes from the tip of the upper lip down to the chin, and you want your bottom lip to touch the line, which it does. Her S line goes from the middle of the nose down to the chin. Preferably, you want your upper lip and your bottom lip to touch the line, which it does, so that's perfect. Her bursal line goes from the subnasal down to the chin, and you want your upper lip to barely pass the line, barely pass the line, and you want your bottom lip to barely pass the line too, but ever so slightly. So her upper lip is supposed to pass the line more than her bottom lip, which it does as well. It's kind of hard to see it from this angle, but trust me, it does. Now, this is another nose to chin relationship measurement right here, but it also takes into account your facial convexity. So remember, her facial convexity is flat, and her nose to chin relationship is off as well. So I expect this measurement to be completely off, which it is. It's a tier 6. Tier 6 is, which means that this does not harmonize well at all, and 139 is completely off. Ideally, you want to be between 125 to 132 degrees, and this right here is going to be off for her. So yeah, so her facial convexity is just way too flat, and her nose and chin does not harmonize well, and it's also due to her nose being not protrusive and also downswung. So her nose mythology and her facial convexity are her biggest downfalls in the side view profile. Her gonium to mouth relationship. So ideally, the gonium bone is the bottom of your ramus right here. And this is kind of like the base of the jaw. And you want this bone to be below your mouth line. And this determines whether you have an adequate jaw for your face. And she does have an adequate jaw for her face. And it also indicates whether you have a lengthy ramus, which she also does. So this is perfect. Her recession relative to the Frankfurt plane angle. So this determines if you have a recessed jaw, which she doesn't. I mean, actually, she does. She does have a slightly recessed jaw. The line, preferably, you want it to be at least near or touching the nasion. So this is slightly below the nasion. So this is going to be a tier 2. And this is not bad at all, but preferably you want it to at least touch it. And ideally, you want it to be at the gabella or past the gabella. So you just want it to pass these 2 points right here for any face. So, but she's not too bad though. This is not like a really bad flaw or anything like that. Her brow ridge inclination is 15 degrees. This is perfectly fine. You don't want a brow ridge that's too indented back or too forwardly protrusive, but this is perfect. So she does have a good forward brow ridge. And this is the last measurement of today, is her nasal tip, 146 degrees. 146 degrees is actually pretty off. She does have a bulbous nasal tip, and any tip like this is not going to be attractive at all, and is very noticeable from the side view and from the front view profile. So having an undefined nasal tip, because it's just so rounded out near the top, is not going to be ideal. So this is going to be a flaw. So she actually loses some points for this as well. So Like I said again, if you want me to rate your face, I will have my IG down in the description, and I'll also have my email too. Make sure to DM me within 24 to 48 hours. I'll give you the instructions, and yeah, so within 24 to 48 hours, you should be able to have your rating, and yeah, so make sure to DM me and also like the video too. All right, guys, I'm